Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Goodman, Director of Marketing and Development for the YMCA of Northwest Louisiana, and we're here at 318 Latino Studios for Shreveport-Bossier, my city, my community, my home. And I can't think of a more just perfect episode to end 2024 with than our guest today, who is Mack McCarter. Mack, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's absolutely a pleasure. And that's typical for me to close things down rather than open them up.
Well, that is absolutely not what's going to happen. So I can't wait to get into this with you. But let me start. I told you our first question is going to be a little long. You're the founder and coordinator of Community Renewal International, one of our community's most impactful nonprofits that you first started back in 1994. Mm-hmm. You're also one of the great thinkers about community that we have. The what, where, when, who of community renewal are all instructive and invaluable lessons to us all, but where I'd like to spend the most time with you today is the why. In a little while, I'll come back to you to give me a snapshot of community renewal, but let's start here. In numerous podcasts, I've been a detective, asking numerous guests, how do we move from a me to a we world? So my first question for you is, how did we get here? And why are we so me-focused as a community?
Well, let me just start by saying that we're me-focused as a community because we're me-focused as individual human beings. So there's a whole part of us that we have been so constructed as human beings to say that I've got to watch out for me, myself, and I. That's a critical part for all of us to survive. We're hardwired to take care of ourselves. But there's another side of us, Jeffrey, and that other side is that we're hardwired to connect together. We're hardwired to show kindness and goodness to one another. All of the physiology is now in, and they're going to just discover more and more and more, but the verdict is in. And the verdict is that we thrive in kindness and goodness and connection with one another. And so going all the way back to those first few steps of the hominids who came out on the savanna, emerging from the forest, that if you got separated from the group, you died. Period. End of paragraph. We were fragile creatures, and we had, in order to survive, we had to have one another. So therefore, we're hardwired, to connect together, but we're also hardwired to take care of ourselves. And that's the survival instinct within all of us is an incredibly powerful thing. So in effect, you have these two very hungry, ravenous wolves within inside us. And it's always a wrestling match on what wolf is going to win. And the answer to that is, it's the one you feed. And the critical thing is that we must begin to feed the wolf that is ravenous and hungry for human relationships, positive relationships with one another. So really the question is, how did we get here? How did we get here in successive generations of human beings? Because the anomaly is this. There are over 8 billion human beings in our species on this one planet. We don't have an escape hatch. There's no leaving. Whatever we do here, we either survive together or we end up poisoning our planet and also one another. So it's not a question of leaving. We've got to learn to work this through. So how do you have over 8 billion human beings who are hardwired to care together? All of the physiology is there. Our immune systems are enhanced if we receive an act of kindness. All of the hormones that build our immune system are enhanced if we give an act of kindness, even when we see an act of kindness. And even if we don't see it and hear about it, our immune systems flood our body. Our hormones flood our body that give us a wonderful sense of thriving together. So we have, just say, 8.5 billion pluses, and then we have an equals. And the astonishing thing is, all of those pluses somehow equal a minus, a big minus, because we are on the verge since 1945. I was born in March of 1945. In August of 1945, the world changed when we had and used nuclear force to close down the Second World War. And now we can literally destroy our entire species. So we are on the verge and have been on the verge of self-annihilation. So you have all these pluses, and then you've got equals. Here we are as a species, over and over and over again historically. That's literally why I'm back in Shreveport today.
All right, I'm gonna pause you there because I wanna cover a lot of ground with you.
Well, there's a lot to cover.
All right, so my next question for you, just not really switching gears, but going in a slightly different direction, is I want you to tell me about Harry Blake, how you first got to know him, and what are some of the things you learned from Reverend Blake?
Oh my goodness, what a wonderful question. Well, I moved back to Shreveport, and I had been very active. I left Shreveport, of course, when I graduated from Byrd in 1963. Age of 18, I go to TCU and then go into the seminary and then to the ministry. And I was, while I was in TCU, I became very, very active in the civil rights movement there, as well as the anti-war movement, and as well as the beginning of women's rights. So I was marching all the time back in the 60s. It was a decade on fire, and so I was very involved in the civil rights movement outside of Shreveport. When I grew up here, we were so separate in communities. Literally, I can remember seeing trolleys coming down Line Avenue, and they said Allendale. And I had no earthly idea what that was. Let me interrupt
one sec.
Yeah.
You graduated from Byrd in 63. Most people would know this, but just to clarify, in 63, Byrd was segregated still?
Completely, of course. I left the city radically, radically segregated. Restaurants were off limits. Department stores were off limits. It was radically, radically segregated. I grew up in that era, that whole era. So I joined that, and then years later, I moved back to Shreveport. I read a book by Willie Burton entitled On the Black Side. And Jeffrey, when I read that book, it was like putting half of me that was missing back. I couldn't believe it. None of that history I knew. I didn't know any history in the black community. And I read about Harry Blake. I read about what had happened at Little Union after the 4 little girls were murdered at 16th Street in the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham. And I remember reading about him and him seeking to have a memorial service at Little Union. And our police chief, George Dortois at the time, public safety guy, said, "No, you're not." Harry was the president at 26 of the NAACP, which had been outlawed here by city ordinance here in Shreveport. And so he said, "Yes, we are." So they gathered at Little Union and to worship and to memorialize those girls. And then they were surrounded by the police department and the sheriff's deputies, many on horses, and made the worshipers come out 2 by 2. It's a part of our history. It's a shameful part. And then they went in and got Dr. Blake and beat him within an inch of his life. That never made any news coverage in Shreveport. It made the Baton Rouge papers, but it didn't make the Shreveport papers. I read about Harry Blake. Then I just moved back, and I started taking the Shreveport Sun, which is the African-American paper, which also told stories that were not part of the Journal or the Times. And I read about Harry Blake going to deliver a revival. I went, wow. So I went over and heard him preach. And
at Mount Canaan?
No, the revival was actually at a I can't remember the name of the black church, but it was on the corner of Southern and 70th Street. And so I went to hear him preach at this revival. And, I was completely stunned. He was an incredible preacher. I walked outside just to let the wind blow on me to see what was left. I mean, I was just stunned. So I said, and then I found out that he was preaching this. He was the only paid field secretary for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference at the time with Martin Luther King. And so I saw that he was preaching at Mount Canaan. I said, I'm going to go and visit and hear him preach. So I went to Mount Canaan that Sunday. And that
by
was
yourself?
Yeah, by myself. And it was like in June. And here I am, probably about 700 worshipers and myself. And I stuck out pretty much. And then, but everyone was so incredible, so welcoming, so wonderful. Roy Carey was one of the ushers. And Roy had been a city councilman, later became a city councilman. Roy sat me down in the pew and then sat beside me to make sure that, he forsook his duties as an usher to make sure I felt welcome. They didn't know me from Adam. And so I'm just visiting. Harry preached, and that was when I really felt the Lord say to me, the Lord said, join this church. Well, I was by myself, so I started arguing. This whole time, they're singing a hymn.
And you were married already at
I was
the time?
Oh yeah, married, grown children, and so I was there, and they were singing the invitation hymn to invite people to come and join the church and give their life to the goodness of God. And so I sat there and I was arguing. I'm not going to join because everyone here is going to think I'm a spy. Silence. Everybody, I'm doing these arguments. Everybody, they're singing. I'm going, no, I can't join because my wife's not with me. It's a family decision. No, I can't join because all my old friends are going to go, well, there goes Mackie showing off again. And then the Lord just said, well, you don't have faith. And I went, oh, that's a low blow, God. And no one more reluctantly got up. The song, it was over, got up, and I went forward, which is what you do, to join Mount Canaan that day. And it was out of sheer reluctance. And the astonishing thing is, Harry put his arm around me and told me the next day, I'm your friend. Now, he had no reason to trust any white person. I'm your friend. And there's not anything that you're going to do or be that's going to keep me from being your friend. I learned about friendship from Dr. Harry Blake. And then he ushered me into, I didn't know anything about who led the black community, who didn't lead the black community. I just trusted him, and then discovered that he was quite a leader within the black community and then citywide. And it was his trust that literally opened the door. He had me join the Baptist Ministers Fellowship, which I was the only white member there. And then all these doors opened. I literally re-entered Shreveport, Louisiana through the black community. And it was Harry Blake that reached out above all the pain, because he grew up on a plantation. He had watched his daddy suffer, and he suffered. In fact, all of my friends suffer in ways that we just can't comprehend each day in Shreveport. And yet they rise above that to extend. I always say in Isaiah that it says that the wolf and the lamb shall lie down together. And that really doesn't ask much of the wolf, except change your appetite. It asks everything of the lamb. And our race has been the wolf historically.
All right, I'm going to shift you again. So you live part-time in Washington, D.C.
I do.
In an op-ed piece you wrote for the Shreveport Times in 2018, as you looked out at American society as a whole, you wrote these words: "We must celebrate our diversity as we all commit to common values that transcend each of us for the good of all of us."
Yeah.
But how? So a lot of people probably don't know this, but you've studied social systems, trying to discover what kind of society would make possible a world where people love their neighbors.
Correct.
My question for you are, what are some conclusions you've come to?
Well, the first thing I would say, Jeffrey, is that you have to really understand the nature of society. And it was the historian Arnold Toynbee who helped me understand that. And he made a study of civilization as a science itself. He was the first major historian to really, really do that. You know, it's kind of like if a fish is born in the ocean, it just starts swimming. It doesn't really think about the ocean. And we do that so much. We just assume everything's going to be here. And so consequently, he defined it as a system of relationships. And I read that in 1981. That was the third volume of his 12-volume work, A Study of History. And I said, if that's what society is, it can be healed. Because fundamentally, if our society is a system, and I added the term positive, is a system of positive relationships, because negative relationships can kill you. If it's a system of positive relationships, then I knew as a physician, as a pastor, a physician of relationships, how we relate to each other, that relationships can never happen unless we invest our lives in what we share together in common. And then grow that, and then celebrate how different we are. If we're going to start with diversity, which so many folks said, well, we need diversity training. We don't need diversity training. We need training in how to get together. And we can't get together if it's diversity and I'm going to show up at the breakfast table with my wife every day and one of us is going to try to win, I'm going to stop showing up at the breakfast table, And so it's what we share together in common. And so I look at society as marriage and friendship on the grand scale. So the question of how do we build all of these relationships of 8 billion people and connect? We can't touch everybody, but we can touch some. And I always say it's like there are 10 million bricks in the Empire State Building, but each brick only touches and is mortared into 6 other bricks. And so consequently, we can do this where we are. What do we share in common? And that's when I came back to Shreveport and said, what do we share in common? 300,000 people. There's so many different folks. We share in common the capacity to care for one another. So let's now activate and feed what we share in common, and we can take that to the world. We can be an example. Literally, what starts here can change the world. If we put caring into a system and do it systematically and nourish it and see that happens. And literally that can happen. I'll just have to share this. Please. So we asked 3 decisions. How do you enter into this system? Well, you're already caring, number one. So, to a greater or lesser degree, we're just not caring together. Everybody's caring. We're hardwired, but we're not caring together. So we're not a power. We're not a force. So we have to come together to do that. So we've got what we started the We Care team. And the We Care team, 3 questions. Number 1, will you promise to care for each and every and all human beings? Check, I will. I'll care for all human beings. Number 2, realizing that caring alone cannot cure our world, but caring together can. I know I can't do it by myself, so I will join together with all others who have answered that first question. Check, we're on the team. And the third thing is I promise I'm going to share that with people I love and care for, and we'll just continue until we leaven the whole world with what we're already created to do. And then that way, literally, I don't want Community Renewal International to envelop the world. I don't want an organization. I'm not here for that. I'm here to support and to help all of the individuals in the world come together to say, we care, we're all on the same team. And so we've developed a t-shirt that says, because I'm a human being and a TCU grad, I care for you. Or because I'm a human being and a Presbyterian, I care for you. Or because I'm a Muslim and I'm a human being and a Muslim, I care for you. So we identify that which is precious to us. Because I'm a Latino, because I'm a human being and a Latino, I care for you. Because I'm a human being and I go to B'nai Zion, I care for you. Because of that, we come together in that commonality, and that can literally heal the world. Just like it says in Isaiah, the knowledge of the Lord will then cover the earth like an ocean.
And that is one of the 3 strategies of community renewal.
Fundamental.
Do you want to tell me? I told you before we started, I'm going to have someone from
Sure.
CRI on here in a few weeks, so I don't want to get too granular into community renewal, but will you tell me about the other 2 primary strategies?
Yeah.
Just give me a quick snapshot.
The fundamental strategy is that everyone must be together and caring. And we've got to be able to demonstrate that. And it's, as I said, it's not organizational, it is more of an organism of those who have shared together and that in common. And we have 2 other strategies, but all of them feed, will you come to this place? And one is block by block. And here we call that our Haven House strategy, to train block leaders, on every street. And in Washington, D.C., so many folks live in apartments. It's in every apartment complex, floor by floor, who will reach out and get to be friends with the people that live around them, and then help them to get to be friends with one another, but do it systematically. So that's the second strategy. The third is, how do we help our brothers and sisters who are trapped in high crime, high poverty areas? And we have remarkable human beings who we've trained, equipped, and with their families, they actually move into those areas to live and to begin to establish the We Care team and the block by block caring, et cetera. Those are the 3 strategies.
And those are the friendship homes.
Those are called the friendship houses, yes.
And I've heard you say, I'm drawing a blank a little bit on the exact statement, but you said something along the lines of, we can send an email.
Yeah.
But what is the statement?
Yeah, I just say we email our friends worldwide, and we don't know who's living and dying 5 houses down from us, which when your dad grew up here in Shreveport and I grew up in Shreveport, we knew everybody that lived around us, and they all knew us. And so we had that deal, and now we're disconnected. Even though we're connected to the world, we're disconnected from each other.
So diagnose that a little bit for me, because I understand we have these 2 warring factions within us as individuals, but why? I guess my question is, have we become more me? Has the me part of us won out more in this day and age than it used to, and if so, why?
Well, I'm not going to go so far as to say it won out. It's both. It has to be converted, and the way to convert it is when I figure out that my best interest comes when I join the group and hang in there, and I'm contributing to the good of the group, and I see that my interest is then fundamentally fulfilled. So we don't have to try to ever get rid of our capacity for survival. We don't have to do that. We just judo it.
But how do you explain, like when you say I grew up here and I knew my neighbors, or your dad grew up here and he knew his neighbors? Why has that changed in your opinion? Or what has caused that change?
I will tell you exactly what's caused it. If you don't pay attention to relationships, you have to be very intentional about relationships. I love that Willie Nelson song that says, well, maybe I didn't hold you all those long and lonely times, but you were always on my mind. And maybe I never told you, I'm so happy that you're mine, but you were always on my mind. Well, sell that to the Brooklyn Bridge. No woman is going to believe that. And so you have to pay attention to relationships, and it must be intentional, and you feed that relationship. So when you stop paying attention, we've just assumed, and we do it every generation, hey, I was born into society, it's here, I don't have to feed the common good. And that's why I love what you're doing and how effective you are. And Brian and 318 Latino, how effective y'all are in bringing people together to intentionally say, we have to nourish the commonality of our human relational capacity.
So what I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing you say is every generation, because it's been here longer, we take it more and more for granted.
Totally for granted, you bet. Society can improve incrementally, but individuals, each generation has to be trained to be a contributing member of society. And if we're not doing that, we're just taking for granted, by some osmosis, you're going to end up contributing to society. Well, then we raise generation after generation of self-centeredness, which cannot possibly grow us as a global society.
I love that.
Well, it's true.
I love it. All right. So my next question is, as you look at our community in 2024, 30 years after you first started Community Renewal, talk to me about some of the things that still concern you the most.
Well, again, we have got to communicate, which is one of the ways that you're doing. We have got to win the war of communication. And so therefore we have to literally be intentional about a messaging, of goodness. And what happens is we don't make news. We realize that. Now newscasts will give the last minute. Oh, here's 29 minutes of dysfunction, and here's 1 minute. Well, the reason that it's 29 minutes is because what makes news is that which is anomalous. It makes news because it's not common. And so you get a guy that boards an airplane in Los Angeles, he's going to fly to New York City, and he starts acting like an idiot, and they have to duct tape him to his chair, and then they have to divert the flight to Denver, and this guy makes the evening news. He's just flown over millions of people like us who are doing good things all the time. So the first thing is we've got to get goodness visible, because I keep telling people, we're the biggest gang in town. We might have a gang here that's a bad dudes. How many? 26. Well, there are 300,000 of us, and we have to become visible. That's the reason we started the We Care signs. So the thing that we have to do is get better and better and better at coalescing. And, for instance, what you're doing and what Brian is doing, those are intentional things, I'll say it again, that are critical. And we all have to join together and do that. The last thing that we want, Jeffrey, is a competitiveness on who cares the best. That's crazy. We've got to all be together and, therefore advance one another. It's all mutually enhancing.
Just because I heard you talk about it and I was fascinated. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but educate people.
I can't help it.
Educate people a little bit on what you learned from ants.
Oh, well, that was a quick thing. I just saw a television show that had all of these ants, that it was the last 3 minutes of a show on the Discovery Channel years ago, and had all these ants. And so the narrator was talking, he said, ants live in successful societies and have for millions of years, which beats us. And then they were on this very plain...
And let me just interrupt one second, because you had said that really every great human society to date at some point has collapsed itself. Every
single one. That's the lesson from history in Toynbee, which he said that the epitaph of all society, of all civilizations, is suicide. And so consequently, so here are these ants, and they've got little ant eggs, and they've got grains of sand, but they're upset because there's no safe place. And right beside that, they had another flat area, and it had this, like a dirt dauber, it had this mud thing that looked like a sea, and then they put one straw there, and an ant crossed over and felt this, crossed back over, and picked up bodily another ant, 2 ants, 4, 8, 16, and then all of a sudden the entire colony gets up. This is in less than 3 minutes. They get their ant eggs, they get grains of sand, they put their ant eggs there, they fill it in with sand, and now everybody's relaxed. And so the lesson that I learned is a simple act put into a system, a simple act like caring, but put it into a system will solve a sophisticated challenge. You give enough ants enough time, they'll take down Mount Everest. I promise you.
Love it. All right, I'm down to my last formal question with you. At the end of that, I'm going to come back to you because I know there's some other things you want to talk about. But my last formal question for you, Mack, is just what gives you hope as you look out at this community that we're headed in the right direction?
You know, I'll tell you exactly what gives me hope. And that is, when this bold Galilean from Nazareth said that everything is like a seed, and it can be the tiniest seed. Our friendship is literally a seed to 8 billion folks, But he said once that's planted, then it becomes like the largest bush in the garden. It's a mustard seed. It's planted. And the key is, how do we plant friendship and then expand it? So I'm going to tell you exactly what gives me hope. I look for seeds. We're looking for what is vital, not for what's making headlines. We've got to pay attention to that. But what is vital always historically has won over the massive. Men used to, everybody talked about Nero. They never did talk about Paul. Now people name their dogs Nero, and they named their sons Paul. And so it's always the seed, and you pay attention to that which can change everything. And you give your attention there, because the vital, which is loving and caring for one another, ultimately will win over the massive. And so we have a saying, and that saying is, love works and love wins. It might not look like it. It might look like it doesn't work and it won't win, but that's where faith comes in. We invest our lives, in the fact that we believe that love works and love wins. And the entire world can have that faith. All of us, no matter where we came from, we can choose to give our lives to the fact that love works and love will win, and as opposed to the destructive forces. So that takes a lot of faith, especially when you're seeing the news and everything. But there's other news that's there.
Well, Mack, I know there's other things you want to share. Anything at all that you want to share, get into, please. We have all the time in the world. And I know you tell me I shouldn't tell you of all people that. But
of all people. You never want to say that to a preacher.
I'm serious. I know you have some exciting developments, as you always do. You do such inspiring and tremendous work. So please.
Well, no, I love this city. And just like you, there are so many folks go Shreveport, Louisiana. Well, I was born here and grew up here. And I absolutely, and my wife will tell you, she's from San Antonio, that she'll tell friends, he always wanted to go back, and I love it. And so what has happened here, is now literally reaching out all over. I moved to Washington for one reason, and that was John Dalton, who grew up here, Secretary of the Navy. John said, Mack, every human being is represented in Washington, D.C., across the globe. Everybody's represented there. And they're not going to come to Shreveport to see the model, but they will come to Washington. And so you need to come and put the model on the ground in Washington, D.C., so that it can begin to reach, through friendships, et cetera, the world. Well, since we moved up there in 2010, the nation of Cameroon has now, they've begun Africa Community Renewal. And we established the International House of Friendships in 5 villages there in Cameroon, built a 5,000 square foot house in the middle of villages that didn't have running water, et cetera. And now it becomes the center for these 5 villages. And now it goes up, we're able with the miracle of communication to bring the world down to these 5 villages in Western Cameroon, and then bring the wonderful artisanship, et cetera, of the villages to the world. They are going to the quote, the PBS, the public broadcasting system of Cameroon. I can't tell the letters, I can't remember. They're doing an hour-long special in the next 3 months on Africa Community Renewal because it's spread that far. One of our We Care schools, which Dr. Casey Monero has pioneered using the Community Renewal model within the school system, working along with Kim Mitchell. They have the first We Care school in Yaoundé. It's 850 students from K-5 to 12th grade. It has changed lives. The parents have formed their own We Care club. It has done astonishing things. We're just opening the door in Slovakia through the Fulbright Scholars. There had been an incredible partnership there, and they are now moving into a national We Care model over the next year, and they're calling it Community Renewal University over the entire country. And then in Ethiopia, which is really, really exciting to me, is the former and only female Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Ethiopia has just become a We Care team member. And she's like a rock star. And she's coming to Shreveport in April to spend a couple of weeks to be trained to go. She was nominated twice for a Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, at the Robinson Film Center that your mother was so instrumental in forming, a movie was made of her life called Different, meaning courage. And it was at the Sundance Film Festival and won the Audience Award at the Sundance Film. We're gonna partner and show that while her name is Maasa Ashinafi. She's here. And she's taking Community Renewal back to she's a household name in Ethiopia. So here from Shreveport, bang, all of this. And then, of course, one of my dearest friends is the ambassador of Mexico. And it happened because we lived in Washington, D.C. And we're going to be, presenting to his entire staff the system because he was Secretary of Education before becoming ambassador. And his whole thought is that together our nations can resolve, what differences, what minor, honestly, they're very hurtful, but in the scheme of things, we can see that love will work with our neighbors, and they're our friends and want to be friends, the vast majority. So we're not going to count the guy that acted crazy and got duct taped to his seat. We're going to count the millions of folks from Mexico and who are our friends. And that's why it's so important that 318 Latino, that we share in this common love together. And so those are things where
And you brought the ambassador to Shreveport, right?
Yeah.
And what was the occasion?
It was our 30th anniversary. For our 20th anniversary, President Carter came and spoke. And then I thought, well, now we've moved into the international arena. Let's bring in an international figure, Esteban Montezuma. And by the way, he's direct lineage from Emperor Montezuma, the second of the Aztec nation. And so wonderful, wonderful, incredible man with a wonderful heart for the poor. And so that's happening. And then we're moving strongly into the whole veterans community with our goal is to mobilize every veteran in the entire world and mobilize them to form an army of caring for one another. And they're already out there. They're already deployed. Now we just need to mobilize them in this common cause because we have to do that to heal planet Earth.
Normally I don't do this, but I'm going to need your help for 1 second. So in preparing for today, I listened to a bunch of talks you gave. I read many things on you. You won maybe in 2018 or 2019, it was pre-COVID, a Citizen of the Year award from an organization. I want to I hope everyone listens to this, and I hope I do even a tenth of as good a job as Matt did in his speech in receiving this award. But I want to encourage and urge everyone listening to this today to go look for this talk that Matt gave while receiving the Citizen of the Year award. You can find it on YouTube. So I just want to encourage people to listen to it because it's one of the greatest things I've heard all year.
Oh, well, how wonderful, really. And I just, all I am is, kind of the spokesman for an incredible group of human beings who sacrificially, are helping us to go forward, to nourish the caring, to start it and nourish it together. And so, we have that. And I just received a call it's about a week and a half ago from the Surgeon General, who is so concerned, about solving the epidemic of loneliness. And he had gotten word about community renewal, and I'm meeting with him on January the 7th. And so here, I want folks in Shreveport to know what started here. As you give your life to a transcendent cause, and the highest cause we can give ourselves to is let's love one another, and that's faithfulness to our faith. And so what started here can change the world. And I believe that. And folks, I don't meet better people than you and Bryant of 318. Well, his mom, Avita, is almost better than him, but I would say they're equal. And
I would too. He's been tremendous.
Oh my gosh. And so, let's take all the goodness, let's come together, and make it happen.
Well, Matt, you're amazing, and I appreciate you taking the time and spending a little bit of it with us. And you've definitely changed this community, changed our world, and I've been changed getting to know you and learning more about your story. So thank you so much.
Well, same here. Your family, as you well know, had a profound effect on me. Your dad, I watched your dad playing tennis when I was growing up, and then met your mom when I came back here. And you don't get better than that. And boy, are you ever, a chip off the old block, Jeffrey. God bless you for your dedication to Shreveport and to the YMCA for their wonderful insight and oversight of saying, we have to be a community together. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to leave planet Earth. So let's heal. That's it. And so God bless you. And thank you, Bryant, for having us here in your studio and for giving this gift to our city.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. Take care.